Hi, my name's gwEm and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I want to talk about a modification that I've developed myself for the Yamaha CS-5 keyboard, which came out I think in 1978. So some of the cool things about this keyboard is that it's full of 1970s charm. It's got an interesting sounding filter. It's got a few modes: low pass, band pass and high pass, and the filter is 12 dB and it's got kind of an interesting growl to it. The other cool thing about this synth is that it is quite affordable on the second-hand market. Actually, you can pick one up for around £250, perhaps even less, and they, I think, sound really good for the money. So I've done a few videos on the CS5. I noticed that one of the real drawbacks of it as a keyboard is that it has a single envelope. Now, a few other synthesizers do have a single envelope, like the SH-101 for example, but the disadvantage of having a single envelope is that you have to use the same one for the filter and the amplitude. So that kind of limits the sounds you can get out of it. Now, the SH-101 that I mentioned gets around this limitation by allowing you to map the gate, just a simple on or off setting while you're pressing the key down, and having that routed into the VCA. So you can set the amplitude and the filter separately. And I don't know why Yamaha didn't offer that. So I scoured the web for a mod which would allow a similar thing, allow me to put a gate signal into the VCA. I couldn't find one, and in fact a lot of people said that it wouldn't be possible and that kind of thing. So I had a look at the service manual and the schematics, and I actually have figured out a way that will allow you to switch the VCA between using the envelope if you want to, like stock, or switching it to use a gate, and that is a similar feature to the SH-101 or SH-09 or that type of Roland synth. It's quite an easy mod to do, I think. I'll talk you through it now, and it greatly increases the versatility and fun you can get out of this vintage bit of gear. And I think it is something of a bargain. I'm going to do a separate review video on it at some point. So stay tuned and watch how this all unfolds. Alright, so let's start by showing you how to take the panel off the CS-5. So there is 4 screws on the side you need to undo. So one is here, just here. One is up here, just on the opposite corner, so here and here, and the same on the other side, basically here and here. Now let's do those. The next screws we need to undo are on the back, so they're at the bottom. There's 1, 2, 3. That's 1, 2, 3. Let's undo those. So at this point you can lift off this cover, which sometimes needs a little waggle, but it's pretty straightforward. So you kind of need to flip this up so that the back is flipped and resting on the table or whatever surface you're using. So to do that, I lift up the keyboard and just rest it on the jacks, the power cable and the fuse cable there. Like that, and it stays quite stable. And then the area of the circuit that we're working on is here, and I'll show you some close-up pictures of that. Now here is how the circuit board looks before you do the modification, and all the changes are going to center around IC14, which you can see there in the middle of the image. So the first thing you need to do is to cut some tracks. And you can see the tracks you need to cut there in red. You can use a multimeter to make sure that the tracks are indeed properly cut. The next stage is to solder a 1 meg resistor between the two solder pads that I have shown there. You might like to put a little tape underneath the resistor to make sure that it doesn't touch any of the other pads underneath it. Then you need to solder a 2 meg resistor. Now that can be a proper 2 meg resistor, or you can do what I did, which is use two 1 meg resistors. And that needs to go to that pad there in the bottom left, and the other end of the 1 meg resistor that you've already soldered. Then in parallel with that 2 meg resistor, you need to solder a 4.7 nanofarad capacitor, and that will stop the gate clicking too much when you press a key. The next stage is to solder together two pins of IC14, as you can see indicated there by the green. So in order to do that, what I did was to bend the two leads of IC14 together and just solder them. At this point you can actually do a test on your work. If you put a multimeter across the connection you've just made, but that you did to connect the two pins on IC14 and ground, when you press a key on the keyboard of the CS5, you should see the voltage on that pin go from 0 volts when you're not pressing a key to 10 volts when you are pressing one. And if it does that, you know that the mod is working so far. So now you can cut another trace on the PCB. This is the last trace you need to cut. It is the trace that's going to the envelope depth pot, and you can see it's a small cut there in red. At this point you can connect the switch, which will go from the new gate signal that you've created and the old envelope. So you need to solder 3 flying leads going to a single pole double throw switch. The flying lead from the envelope depth pot needs to go in the middle of the switch, and then you can please yourself which way round you solder the gate and the envelope, but I soldered the gate to the top of the switch and the envelope to the bottom. Now you need to mount the switch to the case. I've got a little video segment now showing the position where I drilled a hole and mounted the switch, and I think it looks pretty good there. So this is how I decided how to drill the hole, right? So you take a line from the LFO mod and EG depth knob horizontally, and then that intersects with a line that goes around this painting on the front panel that goes around the power switch. So if you do a cross one which goes along that white line for the power switch, and one which is in a line with the two control knobs here, that is where you want to drill your hole through the front panel. And in my case I drilled a 6.5mm hole, which is a 1/4 inch, but it will depend on the toggle switch you use. I picked a nice black one so that it blends in very well, and you can see the labeling on the that I've added on the panel I used a dyno tape machine to make, but you probably don't even need to label it if you don't want to. I just like the 1970s look there. Finally, if anyone is interested, here is the schematic of the change. So you can see on the top there the part of IC14 that was already connected. So the input of that is going between 0 and 15 volts. Now the envelope output of the CS5 goes between 0 and 10 volts, so it goes through a potential divider, which is formed from the 1 meg and 2 meg resistors there. There is a 4.7 nanofarad capacitor to remove the click. And then we have a unity gain follower, which is using the unused part of IC14, which will buffer that gate. The same circuit is on the output of the envelope generator actually. And that will give you your 0 to 10 volt gate, which you can then put into the VCA. Right, so let's put this all back. So as I said before, it's just a reversal of the way you took it off really. And 2 screws here, 2 screws on the back, and 3 on the rear panel. You'll notice that some of the screws for the side are slightly longer. There you go. And the longer ones go at the longer ones go in the back. When you do the rear screws, make sure that the holes line up properly. I did have some problems when I refitted it the first time. I got some of the screws cross-threaded, so try to avoid that. And there we go, it's back together, looking cool and 1970s. So we're in the studio with the modded CS5, and my intention is to show you how the mod works. So we've got this switch here that we added. So that will allow us to toggle the VCA between using the envelope generator, like it normally does in stock, or just using a gate, which comes from pressing a key. So I programmed a simple bass sound. And that's using the gate at the moment. So watch what happens when I change the VCA from using the gate to using the envelope generator as it does stock. The sound dies out very quickly. So this is stock. And that's with the new gate envelope. So you can now use the envelope just to set up the filter, and then you can rely on the gate, so you can create much more aggressive sounds. Without this feature, you have to kind of finagle the envelope to satisfy the requirements of the VCA and VCF, which to be fair is generally possible, but now you don't have to worry about that. You can just dial your sounds in. So we've got the kind of a resonant squelchy sound, so that's with the gate at the moment. If we switch it to use the envelope generator, you can hear it fades out before it gets to the end of the sweep. Now it keeps going. Of course, as I said, there's ways you can kind of finagle it using the sustain level and tweaking the envelope. But you know, that is having that effect, but it is causing the volume to drop as well. So it's much more satisfying to have that gate switch and work it like that. So there you go, that's how you can add a switch to your Yamaha CS-5, so you can switch between using the gate or using an envelope for the VCA, similar to like how an SH-101 works. And I think it makes the synth a lot more fun to use and gives you a lot more options. If you don't have a CS-5, I hope you enjoyed watching the process of me implementing the mod. It would be great if you could like the video if you got this far, and maybe even consider subscribing to my channel. I've got some more Yamaha CS-5 content coming up. There's a few videos already, but I'd like to do a full review. So stay tuned for that and stay safe.